Hi guys, this is Sheila. Hope everybody's staying safe out there. This is another video on our Untold Stories where we visit historic locations and dive into the history and paranormal side. Thank you for watching. Be sure to check out our page on Facebook. We decided to visit a tree that has a haunted history. This tree is called the torture tree or the hanging tree and is located in Livingston County. In the late 1700s, people were slowly taking the lands from the Native Americans. The Native Americans decided to band together and get their land back. This effort turned out to be so big that General George Washington had 3,500 men go march in with General John Sullivan to help gain control. Now, what does this have to do with the torture tree? Well, it was Saturday, September 11, 1779, when General Sullivan and his crew were arguing as whether they should go to the west or east bank of the Genesee River. So the following day, Sullivan sent Lieutenant Thomas Boyd and a few others to go and search the location of the Native American village. The village they were seeking was called the Seneca Village. On their way to go search for the village, Boyd and his men encountered a few Seneca Indians walking the trail with firearms in the middle of the night. Now, what Boyd and his men don't know is that there were more Indians hiding out along the banks of the Genesee River. After the brief fight between the two, one of Boyd's men made it back to Sullivan to report. Lieutenant Thomas Boyd and a man named Sergeant Michael Parker were a few of the men that were brought back to the village. They were questioned by Chief Littlebeard, who was also known as Joseph Brant. He was a Mohawk Indian who chose to have an English name. After the interrogation of Boyd and Parker, Butler and Brand decided that neither man knew any details about what Sullivan's plans were. So Littlebeard and his men left and turned them over to the care of the Senecas. Now at this time, Boyd and Parker were taken to what we now call the torture tree. Here they both underwent a trial. This trial involved horrible abuses where the finger and toenails were removed, their genitals mutilated, and their backs were whipped. Boyd and Parker were then stripped naked and their right ears were cut off. Their noses and their tongues were also removed. Their right eyes had been gouged from their sockets. In a final end of the Senecas protesting their land not to be taken, the Indians cut open the stomachs of Parker and Boyd. Indians took each of their intestines, tied them to the tree, and made the men walk around the trunk of the tree. After this, their hearts were ripped out of their bodies and each were beheaded. Now, after all of this happened, Sullivan's army finally made it to the tree, where they found Boyd's head on a stick. Parker's head was never to be seen again. Sullivan and his men destroyed every single trace of the Seneca village that they could. They gave a proper burial to Boyd and Parker near the torture tree, even though this is where their agony took place. Now, this story is far from over. In 1807, their peace was interrupted when some grave robbers stole articles of their clothing. In 1837, again, the graves were opened and the site was confirmed as having been the final resting place for the two Revolutionary War veterans. On August 19, 1841, using 6 boats, the graves were exhumed and moved to Rochester. The remains were then placed in Mount Hope Cemetery. Now, if that all wasn't enough for their souls to not rest, once again, in 1903, the Daughters of the Revolution went and exhumed the bones of Boyd and Parker. Mount Hope Cemetery still has the markers for Boyd and Parker, but that is all that they are, memorials. The Daughters of the Revolution are a service organization for women who promote historic preservation and patriotism. So the Daughters of the Revolution moved their remains back to where Boyd and Parker's fates were sealed. In 1927, this area was marked with a granite boulder and plaque. Since 2009, the torture tree is a registered National Historic Landmark. The tree is over 275 years old and most likely is one of the oldest trees in the entire state. Now, when we heard about this tree, we had to go and check it out. We thought that it would be an interesting idea to see if we could catch any voices using our recorder through EVPs. If you don't know what an EVP is, it's short for electronic voice phenomenon. We alone normally can't pick up voice of the dead, so we need help from our electronics. My recorder is one of my favorite tools to use because you know for sure what you are hearing is real. I know that there are many skeptics out there, and you may be one of them, and that's okay. That is why we are here. We want to show you what a real EVP sounds like. Our group has been investigating the unknown for years. We have seen and heard things that we cannot explain, and that's why we started our Untold Stories. We get to meet new people and travel, and we get to learn the history of these amazing places where we can then show you. I don't know if you guys can see it very well, but I did the flashlight trick where if there's something here, we tell it to turn on, and as they're walking back to the tree from the car, it turned on. Get a little closer. Can you turn it off for me? You just got truth? Mike has what is called an Ovilus 4. It's like a spirit box, and oh, it just went off. Did you guys see it? I was saying, Mike has a spirit box called the Ovilus 4, and it just, you can see, just said truth. And I said, is there somebody here?
Worry, puncture, akasha. What the fuck? What?
The Ovilus 4 is another form of a spirit box without all of the loudness of the radio frequencies. One word that came through the Ovilus was akasha. When we looked up what this word meant, we found out that it is a term in traditional Indian cosmology. This term fits perfectly, and of all the years of us using the Ovilus 4, we have never gotten anything like this. This shows that this device is pretty accurate.
And did what they did to you. We're all Americans here now.